From business owner to investor extraordinaire. Today, we're very, very lucky to have Mathieu Prégent-Pelletier. Hopefully, I didn't butcher that. We got Mathieu on deck here today for another episode of Montreal's Elite Unleashed, the podcast for hustlers looking to level up their lives. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to Montreal's Elite Unleashed, the podcast for hustlers looking to level up their lives. I'm your host, Logan Boyce, alongside, as always, Jonathan Ehrlich. What's up, Johnny boy? And today we got Mathieu Prégent-Pelletier. Please tell me I didn't butcher that too hard. I'm so sorry.
It's very good, but I would expect nothing less from a local Montreal.
Yeah, exactly. Yikes, the local Anglo. But yeah, we're super excited to have you, man. So why don't you talk to us about kind of your journey? You were an owner of an agency. You were a realtor. How did all this start?
So it all started. So I'm a West Island born and raised kind of guy. Not
Same
kind of guy. So, but on the French side, obviously, if you couldn't tell from my name. So. We'll go really quick. I was always supposed to be an engineer. So you guys have known me a little bit. I'm a little bit analytical.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So growing up my entire life, I'm going to be an engineer. So I go to high school, go to CJEP, John Abbott, get into McGill engineering. And it's
get
really,
all the ladies because they want the engineers.
They definitely, yeah, there's a lot.
They're lining up.
The 99% male faculty that is McGill engineering. And it wasn't for me. During that time, I started working in the service industry, which I think is a very common situation for anybody that ends up in real estate. So I actually end up working locally at Jack Astor's here in Dorval.
Oh, yeah.
Not that we're in Dorval right now, but locally in the West Island. Spent 8 total years there. During that time, so I did half an engineering degree, finally opted out, went into finance at John Molson, got my degree there. And after 5 years of university, normally people that are in 5 years university, they have a master's degree. I only had a bachelor's degree. I was kind of burnt out, and I really didn't want to get a 9 to 5. So I just kept working in the restaurant business, and I really had no plans to leave.
It's a tough business to leave because of the tips.
Yeah, so for me personally at the time, and I'll definitely talk about this later, I was not willing to make a short-term sacrifice for long-term gains. So what do I mean by that? I was making at the time, and I'm going to date myself here, probably 10 years ago, so let's say 2014, I was making about $60K. Seemed like, and most of that was that was the declared money. So there was undeclared money on top of that.
Yeah, hell yeah.
So my declared was 60. I was making decent money, and I was scrolling it away, and I was working, especially during the last few years of my undergrad. I was working 2 jobs and going to school full time. I had nowhere to put the money, right? I was, living at home, which allowed me to save a lot of money. So I think I was putting away $1,000 a week, just $1,000. I was depositing cash money, $1,000 a week.
Nice.
My mom thought I was dealing drugs. I was not dealing drugs, Mom.
You were dealing chicken tenders.
That's right. I learned a lot in that position. So I used to be a very uncomfortable, someone who was very uncomfortable with people, I guess. And for some reason, I'm like, I'm going to go be a bartender. I'm going to be a server. I just like to stay up at night, I guess. And I just wanted to make money instead of, watch reruns on TV. So my people skills come from there, what I perceive to be people skills. And I had no real plans of leaving, but my real out was going to be already at that stage, real estate. So I knew that I was going to invest in real estate. That was always the plan. And so
so investing was the horizon the entire time.
The entire time
was there something that was pulling you towards investing in real estate, or you're just like money?
I would say that it's and I want to say this clearly for those who are. I did watch some HGTV. That's not really how real estate is, but there was one show that kind of got me started in thinking that way, which was Income Property with Scott McGillivray. So I'd watch that fairly religiously. Even went to a boot camp of his. So I started paying for education at that time, right? So I'm a big proponent of alternative education.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that was the first thing I ever spent money on to go and learn outside of the academic route, right? So it was a big thing at the time. It was a large ticket item. Had to spend $1,000 to go on a weekend away in Ottawa because they wouldn't even come to Montreal back then. Now I believe they do. I think they're called WealthSpire now. But point is that real estate investing was going to be my way out. And really, I didn't know anybody in the space here that was succeeding. And I kept trying to just learn and learn and learn. Because you'd read a book, and I tell this to my clients now, right? So you'd read a book about ratios to look for and your gross income multipliers and all these things, and you realize that now with hindsight 2020, this is speaking about a U.S. based
Yeah.
typically speaking, environment, and not even just US based, central US based, right?
Yeah.
And so even if you flip it and you go and you start reading books on investing in Canadian real estate, it's not talking about the Montreal market, or it's not talking about the Toronto market,
No.
right? It's talking about other markets. And so if you just read this book and it's like, well, if you find this thing with a 10x gross income multiplier, you should buy it, right? And the reality is, even a long time ago, 10 plus years ago, we were talking about a 15x multiplier was what was trading at here in Montreal. So I took a long time to get started, long story short, but so I was still in the service industry. And then out of nowhere, 8 years into my career, and I'm using quotation marks for those of you there on audio, not that being a server is not a good career, it's just I was not living up to my potential.
Yeah.
Okay. So 8 years into that process, one of my customers recruits me into his company, and I was parachuted number 3 into a customer service company. I will not name them necessarily because it wasn't a great experience, but what it did do is it got me out of the rut. Okay. So it got me out of the very comfortable situation that I knew very well, but that my career was going nowhere. I had capped. I wasn't really going to make more money. I had no interest in getting into management. And so it got me out of that. And that was in 2015. The opportunity, which was a great opportunity, came with, equity potential, all that kind of fun stuff that, entrepreneurs look for. And maybe that also hit a little entrepreneurial bug of saying, hey, the harder I work, the more equity I could make, the more money I could make. So then that didn't work out. It lasted all of 9 weeks.
Wow.
So it was a great 9-week opportunity. And so I then tried to quit. They said no, and the next day they fired me. So, I had an opportunity to get EI, which was great at the time. And so for the first time in probably 10 years, as a guy in his 20s, did not have an employment, could have gone back, obviously, to service, could have gone whatever. Took a step back and said, what do I really want to do? Well, I want to invest in real estate, which was always my thesis.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was like, how do I get a job or a role that puts me close to that investment on my day job, right? And so that's when I started my licensing process, and I got my license through 2015 to 2016, and then that's when I became an agent. And so that's where I started, doing the work. And I think what probably differentiates my career path now as an agent, or a broker as we call it here, is that I immediately started running an operation, a brokerage. Okay, so from 2016, I was the head operator of a Century 21 franchise that I would later become co-owner of. And so as a result of that, not only was
How did that opportunity materialize?
So that was a new owner. So he had bought an existing franchise from another franchisee. And this new owner was my family's broker, so the guy that for 10 years had done every deal, and I found out later on, not just my own family, like immediate family, because we had done like a purchase and a sale, another purchase and a sale, another purchase and a sale, sold my grandfather's house when he had passed away, sold this other house and I didn't even know about that back then. Found out once we partnered together, essentially. So he was my broker as well. So when I was looking for my first properties in 2015, which is exactly when I also bought my first property in either 15 or 16 after years of searching. So he was my broker for years. So looking. Once again, and this is a lesson I learned, we can talk about this, choosing your mentors correctly.
Yeah.
He was not the right mentor, but at the time I did not know this.
Right.
Okay. So he just he's a successful Remax and then Sutton agent at the time, and then buys a Century 21 franchise. And we were very close at the time. And even during the acquisition phase, the underwriting of it, I was involved in the underwriting because I had decided to get into real estate. And I said, hey, maybe we can do this together.
Yeah.
Okay. So from the very beginning, I guess from the moment that I pivoted out of service, there was always an entrepreneurial element, right? So it was either an equity position with that company, or, hey, if I'm going to be licensed, how can I be an owner of the agency?
Right.
Without knowing what that really meant, obviously. So in the end, he purchased it without me because I had opted out. And then when I was ready to go into residential real estate, because I did do a stint in commercial real estate, I realized there was no equity for me at the time. But there was a position for the operations, a mentor, senior junior type of relationship. And so that's how I took over operations. And then what really, really catapulted my knowledge base is that I would have every inbound call from our agents would come to the central line for questions on either the law or technology.
So you were acting as the AEO.
In a way, yes. Like let's not. Although it's not my company anymore, so who cares? But yes, I was. I was freshly licensed, which means I had the most up to date learning, and because I had almost a decade of real estate education, I just had, I was head and shoulders above where most people would have been at.
Right.
But whenever I didn't have the answer, I would go find the answer.
Right.
And so that's where the learning curve was exponential.
And that's just adding to your knowledge.
Exactly, right? So there's real estate, there's real estate law, and then there's the Real Estate Brokerage Act, right?
Yeah.
And so all of these things kind of came up, and so I really catapulted my knowledge like next level in terms of that. And then in 2018, there was a partnership that was struck with the former owner, that owner at the time. And he was going to come in, and he saw that really the nerve center was me. And so through that discussion, we became a 3-person partnership.
Cool.
And so I earned my equity. I didn't have necessarily a buy-in. I earned it through being the head operator, right?
Very cool.
And so that's how I became an owner. I can pause here, answer any questions, or we can go on to
No,
to
man, I
present
want
day.
to. Yeah, no, I want to hear the rest of the story, because it's rare that somebody starts off being in that position of leadership right from the get-go. So that's one of the reasons your story is so fascinating, because of that.
Right. Well, I'm happy to share any details that are not that are not blacklisted. But
did you ever question any of that as you were going through it? If you were given the position and then you were just kind of like, yeah, I guess this is the route that I'm supposed to take, or were you ever like, wait a minute, why am I the guy right now for this? Why don't they have someone else who's doing this?
I mean, I had a chance. I could have left, right? That was so at that merger, if you will, or I could have chosen. So they had 2 options. They could then start paying me, because that's the whole other thing. I wasn't getting paid for any of this when I wasn't a shareholder, okay? And then at some point I had almost left because I wasn't getting paid and I felt I wasn't getting my dues. And so it was the same thing, right? All of these happened at the same time. So the merger talk and the am I getting paid what I'm worth talk all happened at the same time, which led to equity in the business, which could have turned into I'm going to leave and have other opportunities. And one of the things that I continuously struggle with more now is the right opportunity vehicle. So at the time, it seemed like a no-brainer opportunity vehicle. I've earned my way into equity. It doesn't necessarily cost me anything. Even if it did, it would have to make sense from an ROI perspective. But at the time, I hadn't really opened up my eyes to other opportunity vehicles, right? Which we'll talk about in a second.
Well, that's what I always say to the agents or brokers rather who affiliate themselves with us, is we say, listen, you don't necessarily have to be super passionate about showing houses and selling houses. The real estate's the best vehicle in the whole world, because you can make so much money as a broker, as an agent. You can make as much money as you want, as long as you're willing to just get your freaking ass kicked every single day. You can make a lot of money, and what you choose to do with that, that's why real estate's the best vehicle, because you can decide where you want to put that dump truck of money.
Yeah.
Which is, I think it's awesome. And I find it fascinating that you always had investing on the horizon. And it's so rare, because normally people have to be an agent for like 5 years, get their ass kicked, and then realize, hey, maybe I should probably start looking at my future a little bit or whatever,
Yeah. So, I mean, in my position as an owner, I ended up having many, many interviews with rookies, right? So we'd go, or freshly licensed people, like recruiting was the biggest thing you would do, right? And so there's definitely this, I have the common, hey, why'd you get into real estate? A lot of the time was, I want to have unlimited upside. I don't want to have a boss, and I want to make my own schedule, right? And the irony behind that is that you guys know, because you're smirking at me right now.
Yeah.
Brokers or agents that make their own schedule are not going to have unlimited potential, because they need to treat it like a job, and they need to have the discipline in order to have the results that they want.
Yep.
And so, definitely one thing that I don't know what is said at career nights, for real estate school, because I never had to get pitched by a career night. I just went and I said, I want to be a real estate investor. Surely the best route is to become an agent. And I remember at the time, even going back to before I got licensed, it was, do I become a contractor or do I become an agent? And at the time, becoming a contractor seemed like it would be in the end, my body would wear out before my mind would wear out. Mm-hmm. And so I wouldn't be able to move forward. But once again, that was very that thinking was not necessarily correct, because we see now, I mean, you guys are investing in real estate as well. For me personally, the biggest hurdle in investment is the construction side.
Yeah.
And right now, the construction industry there's a lack of talent. There's a lack of good talent.
Yep.
And it's very hard to be profitable. And ironically, to go back in time, if I would gotten into construction and have my own construction company, well, that would alleviate that entire part. Now, you can't go back in time and, be the person you are today with the knowledge of today and, and do parallel worlds. But the point is that I didn't really know what all the avenues could be. I knew that I wanted to invest in real estate. And ultimately speaking, I think no matter what I would have chosen, I'd still end up basically being where I am now, which is being a business owner, investing in real estate, which is the number one thing.
It's really similar too, because even if you did get into the contracting side of things rather than the agent side of things, it's still the same problem. Because unless you want to be the one swinging the hammer every single day, you're still looking for that talent. So I think you made the right choice simply because you'd still be going through what you're going through right now. I'm very, very lucky. We've been using the same contractor since we flipped our first house in 2012. And we're just so damn lucky because of it. But he's a beast, but he's like 70 something years old. And he's still faster than 95% of contractors I've used. 99% of contractors. I tell this story, people don't believe it. We had a bungalow. It was like a 1,300 square foot bungalow. We ripped out the basement. We called this guy Darcy. He's our guy. Darcy comes. Him and one other guy framed the entire basement because there was nothing. He framed the basement, the ceiling, insulated the ceiling, framed the entire basement in one day. The next day, it was all drywalled. It was all plastered. The day after that, it was all sanded. It was like, it's mind-bogglingly insane. So the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because I feel you, because no one is going to live up to that dude, because he's built full houses before. So there's nothing he's scared of. He knows everything, and he's really fast. People are telling me, oh yeah, I'm renovating my bathroom. I should have it ready in I don't know. What do you think, honey? 2-3 weeks? And I'm like, what the?
Dars did it in a day.
2-3 weeks. We used to renovate a bathroom in probably 3 days, give or take.
Yeah.
Because he did even the bathroom at my house. He did the bathroom at my house, and we expanded it into the other room to fit the shower and everything. And that entire thing was done in a couple of days. It was insane.
Yeah, I watch a lot of YouTube videos on my downtime watching. Normally about 7 days is what a bathroom is. Depends on what you do and how much crew you have. But the reality is that the way it is in Quebec here, right? You're supposed to have an RBQ license in the shares of the asset that is being flipped. So if you're buying a house with the intention to sell it, you are, I believe it's a promoter in the eyes of the RBQ. And if you're a promoter, you need to have an RBQ license within the share structure of the ownership, right? And so even just having that would be helpful. But you're not wrong in the sense of if you're going to be, the investor, the CEO, you can't be the one doing the nitty gritty, right? So you can't be the one swinging the hammer, just like you can't be the one so my expertise is negotiating deals, and making it a profitable deal where feasible. And probably we'll get into that model in a little bit, but just to wrap up the history. So in 2018, like I said, became an owner. In 2019, we went from a 3-person ownership to a 2-person ownership. So the original owner, we bought him out on his shares. The reason being just mindset wasn't aligned. And then very recently, in the end of 2023, I sold off my shares of the company. And the reason is similar to, it's the opportunity vehicle question. So for many years, I kind of look at what are my silos of business. And I kind of want to look and say, at the time I had, I'm a broker owner, I'm an investor, and I'm a broker. So I still was doing deals, right? So, and I looked at, okay, what is my time commitment? And then what was my cash position? And the broker owner role was stable, but not very profitable, right? So the expression, brokers go broke, right? So, I mean, like I said, it was a decent business, very stable, but I did not find that the time that I was putting into it was commensurate to the upside potential, right? And so I would look at my investment business. I was like, well, I did, how much time did I really put into this? And I made this much. And I would look at my broker business and say, well, that's really where I'm making the majority of my money. and that money is required in order for us to do the investing side of things. So if I'm gonna eliminate one, it's going to be the brokerage. And so I sold the brokerage.
And this is what you mean when you say that you're analytical.
A little bit, right? So and I would say I don't even know that what I'm currently doing is the right opportunity vehicle. So I have a lot of I have colleagues of mine that we met in, or let's say around 2019, 2018, something like that. And we met in, once again, this is when I really started paying a lot of money in alternative education. I've got multiple six figures in alternative education on the real estate investing space, okay? And so I would meet some of my now very good friends in those types of environments where we're paying a lot of money for masterminds, right? And in the same amount of time, they went and built a 100-door portfolio and created $4 million of equity. And I had built a brokerage and grown it from 30 to 40 people. I was like, well, and so even now, as I am still a broker and a team leader, and I invest in flips and smaller stuff, there is the argument that it's not the right opportunity vehicle, that I should be into 20 plus units, 40 plus units. And I think you're going to find, everybody finds their sweet spot, right? In terms of what they want to do. But I think that and one of your mentors, right, Jeff, I think I take that from him, where he eliminates one thing to add the next thing that's even more high value, right? And so anyway, that's the full story of how I was a broker owner from very early on in my career, how now I am no longer a broker owner. And so what I do now is I run my team, which we have a very similar but slightly different model of your organization. More recently, we have 2 full-time ISAs that are setting up opportunities for our agents. So I found that the hardest thing to get our agents to do, and I think any agent to do, would be to call a lead. We were talking about this just earlier, right?
Of course.
So we all know what it takes to convert a lead on average, right? And so, but I think as agents, we have so much going on. So it's such a variety of tasks, right? And if we go back to what is the number one thing that agents told me when I was recruiting them, they don't want to have a boss, and they don't want to really be held to a schedule, which ironically, to have massive success, you need to have a schedule.
As a realtor, you make your own schedule, which is all the time.
Yeah.
What is it? I used to have a 9 to 5, then I became my own boss to work half days, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Well, that's the old, it's the old adage is like that. Entrepreneurs are willing to work 80 hours a week to not have to work 40 hours a week for someone else.
Yeah, exactly. And anyway, so to go back and to say, so what do we do? So my ISAs, their entire job is to filter all the leads and set my agents up for success.
Yep.
Right. And so I think the agents still need phone skills, and this is this is like a much more micro conversation. They still need to go and have done the work, so that you can trust them with a teed up,
Of course.
Funny.
It is similar. Sorry. Yeah. No, it is similar to what we do. It's just, we don't offer the ISA services to absolutely everybody. We limit it to people that, I always like the idea of, listen, we're going to teach you how to get to 100, 150K a year. We're very good at that. We've done that so many times with so many people. We're very good at it. But then when you reach that 100, 150, it takes a lot to break into the $250,000 zone, that you need buy-in from the agent themselves, or the broker themselves. But then also there's only so much bandwidth. So if you know that they're relying on, let's say 30% of their deals on an annual basis need to be coming from leads that you're providing them and you're paying for, at 150K a year, they probably don't have the time to, and literally they probably don't have the time to spend hours every single day doing the necessary follow-ups to nurture these internet leads.
Yep.
The 150K producers. The 70K producers can absolutely find the time for that. So that's why I always like the idea of having the ISAs feed the people that need to be fed. Not need because they're not making enough money. No, the ones that need to be fed because they literally don't have the time to do it themselves. Plus, you want to be giving the hottest and best leads to the people who are most likely to close them, because then the ISA gets paid, then you get paid, then everybody gets paid.
Exactly. Now, you guys, your business is a bit more mature than mine from the team perspective. I learn from you guys all the time, and perhaps in the future that'll be kind of a reward system, right? How do you reward, and who do you reward and when do you reward? But the reality is that the way that our system is set up, that we don't put leads in a pool. So they're always assigned to a person.
Yeah.
And I have a small organization right now anyway. I've got about, I think, 4 or 5 agents that so we got 4 or 5 agents, 2 full-time ISAs, and then you've got me.
Nice.
And even one of my full-time ISAs, she has a varied role. So she will call for my investment leads.
Excellent.
And so what I've done is basically they're on different call shifts. So there's always somebody working every day.
Are these offshore?
Yes, they're part of my international team.
Okay.
And
Sorry, that's
listen,
awesome.
they are part of so they're on my team meetings, just so you guys know. So
Oh, shit,
So
okay.
they are,
Very
I
cool.
consider them to be an equal part of the team. They are not.
This is a lesson in marketing, though. I feel like that nobody understands why we laughed. The reason why we laughed is because the branding behind Matt's
International team. I love it.
they're part of my international team versus their offshore callers is very different.
My virtual assistant is now part of my international
Dude, that's
team.
your international team, dude.
I don't know
Congrats.
why I've
Yeah.
been saying virtual assistant this whole time.
Hey, John. Congrats on your international team.
and you should treat them accordingly, right? Like they should be. I think they are as valuable as anybody that's local in my organization, right? So
Well, especially if you're training them well. That's a lot of people
Yeah.
don't realize how much training goes into those people.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Holy cow.
now they're profitable for us because there's currency arbitrage, right? At the end of
course.
the day, that's what it is. But doesn't mean their talent is any less, right? And so they have one focus, or at least one of them has one crystal clear focus, and the other one has a varied focus. So as a result, what we've done is one works Sunday to Thursday, one works Tuesday to Saturday, and so there's always at least an 8-hour block of time, even on the weekend, where a new lead registers. They're going to get 3 calls in that day, right? And so because we have that organization set up, right, the one who's on multiple tasks, when she has an evening shift, let's say, and so during the evening, the 3 hours that the other guy is not working, she's doing calls on online lead conversion, and leading into those other hours, she's actually doing calls on my investment practice, right? And so we're trying to grow an actual business, right? And so, I find real estate oftentimes it is not a real business. I don't care like how good you are. Oftentimes it has one pillar and that like one client acquisition strategy, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, the strategy is pretty similar across most quote unquote successful brokers too. It's wait. Just wait around for the phone to ring.
Wait
You're
till
a hammer waiting for a nail.
Wait till your credentials are that you've been in business 30 years, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
the amount of times that I've gone head to head in a negotiation with somebody who's, well, I've been doing this 20, 25, 30 years, whatever it may be, and they don't know the contracts, they don't know the law, they don't know anything. And so another thing that aggravates me about the real estate practice, which maybe in 5 years I will no longer be in real estate practice, is that it doesn't matter how correct you are and how much you know compared to the other side of the equation, they can still mess up your transaction.
Yeah, they sure can.
So, I'm in a lot of contentious negotiations, and it just ends up being contentious because the other party doesn't know what they're supposed to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, like in a court of law, that would not take place, right? Both lawyers would be relatively equally, educated, and they would have maybe different levels of experience or different whatever it may be, but there's still this like even base of knowledge that is in practice.
Right.
And I find that when we get into real estate, it just doesn't seem to be the case, So, and the reality is that we are people that are either, we're either you have a high school degree as a minimum, all the way up to you have a master's degree or a PhD in like, engineering of structure. And all these people, all of us have, a real estate license, and all of a sudden, it's not quite a fair playing field.
Well, then you have an organization that handles the licenses that are like, yeah, we're just going to change this law without telling anyone. Yeah, we're going to change how the REBA works here. No one's going to know.
Yeah,
we changed all the documents.
Yeah, exactly.
The other day it was like the what's called the inspection clause. People were like, what do you mean 8 o'clock? And it's like, yeah, no, now it ends at 8 o'clock. Before it was midnight. No, 8 o'clock on the end of that delay.
Yeah.
It's like no one knew.
Yeah. And it's like, yeah, so I mean that's I don't want to get into that type of a discussion, but yeah, definitely like I find people don't read their contracts. Period. End of story. Forget like, okay, a minor change like that, all of us could have gotten fooled by that, right? Was there even an announcement about that? No, right?
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Or I just clicked, I read that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oops.
Which, by the way, I like that, by the way, because, I think one of the bad parts about being in real estate is it's expected for you to be negotiating until midnight. And it's like, that's not how business should be done.
No.
And I'm in a transaction right now on a personal resale of mine. And I have not been able to get this broker to put anything in writing at all, ever, any communication whatsoever. So I will write him an email and I will say, please get back to me in writing. and I will get a phone call.
Oh God.
Jeez.
Sometimes I'll get a phone call that minute, so I know that he just read the email. And sometimes I'll get a phone call 17 hours later.
Yeah.
But it's like, I want to make sure that I have written proof that you have received this information. Please write to me. And so I'm not even sure he knows how to use email. Like, I don't. Yeah. So, at the end of the day, like, you shouldn't have to negotiate till midnight. So I like this 8 o'clock thing, but I think there is a problem that was never communicated. They make a change to the forms, and then we don't know, right? Where are we going? I'm sorry, I kind of got.
No, you're good. No, it comes back to, it reminds me of what I tell people too. It's like, you don't knock on the door of Costco at 1 o'clock in the morning and demand that they sell you eggs. You know what I mean? You do set your hours to a certain degree. When you're new, your hours are 24/7, 365. Yeah. When you're not new, when you're more established, when you've got, an average amount of transactions per year, that's I'd say maybe above 15, above 20. Then you can start saying, I don't work on Sundays. Don't call me on Sundays. I'm watching football. And do not call me ever after 7 o'clock. Because after 7 o'clock, I am with my son. I'm with my daughters, whatever it is. I'm not talking to you. And that's just what it is. And it's your ability to communicate that. But it always comes back to this thing that I find that most real estate agents and brokers have. It's an inability to have difficult conversations. They have such a hard time delivering, tough news or just delivering the facts. Making people feel just even slightly uncomfortable is like the death sentence to I think it's most people. I don't think it's actually just realtors. I think just most people can't have difficult conversations.
People struggle with confrontation.
Yeah,
I think of a difficult conversation.
I think it's technology in general has like created this barrier between people where they're like, oh, I can't, I don't know what they're going to do. I'm scared or whatever.
So I'm surprised that person actually called you. Usually people will like text, they'll hide behind it.
That's true.
But he text is in writing, right? So even that same person, I sent him a different. So we're rescheduling a closing basically, and I texted him because he's texted me in the past. Okay, so I texted him, hey, here's the new, because maybe I'll get a written response.
Sure. Yeah.
Nope. Got a phone call the next day.
That's weird, man.
But it goes to the protection of the people too, because then the words really matter, and then what was said matters. So I learned that very early on, was like, and that's what got me wanting to learn so much, was somebody screwed me in a situation where they said, we're going to put grass. And what they meant was once everything was done, they were going to put seed. And it was just so,
Yikes.
So it gets you in that mind. Then all of a sudden that makes you run. And that kind of inspired me to learn a little more, and then put me in a situation where I wanted to be the mentor for a lot of people. Yeah. And it goes back to one of the things you said earlier too, which I thought was really cool, was you were doing the job until you got the job. Like you were the guy that everyone would come to, and then they were like, well, shit, everyone's coming to this guy. Like he should have that job.
Yep.
And then you were like, well, I'm not getting paid enough for this job. And they're like, well, we can't freaking lose you. How much you want?
That's sick.
The business wasn't so profitable to be able to pay me a large salary, but getting a share of the business, right? Which, real estate's a very simple business at the end of the day, right? So an agency, typically you have, if you compare, like what do most businesses have? They have payroll, overhead, etc. So a real estate agency can actually operate without a payroll, because if you're small enough, you don't really have anybody on state. So you're all consultants.
We've got our international teams.
Exactly, international teams, right? But also all of your salespeople, are not
they're
on
general
payroll,
contractors.
Right? So they're independent contractors, right? With commission, they get T4As, they get commissions, and so technically they're not beholden to any kind of payroll rules. They're not my employees.
You're not withholding tax or anything like that.
We can de-affiliate them at any point in time, which is not the same as getting fired, right? So all of these things, very simplified. So it's to a certain extent a very easy way to learn business, right? And so I have a business degree from John Molson School of Business, but I have learned more from business from two things. Number one, watching Shark Tank, and number two, running that business. And so, nothing will ever prepare you to actually be than being a shareholder in a business, right?
And you put Shark Tank first.
How much?
Well, in the what's the word I'm thinking in French now? In the chronology.
Oh, chronological order.
Chronologically speaking, it was Shark Tank.
Okay, first.
Yeah, exactly.
And then ran your own business.
How much do you think you learned from being an agent? Because I think a lot of people who might be listening to this would think, okay, maybe being an agent is a good vehicle for me because I want to make some money and I want to be able to get a fast track into real estate investing. Because I completely believe that everyone should be investing in real estate even if they don't have money, you can figure it out. But I just think it's the best place to put your money when our money's being devalued so much, so regularly. Yeah. where it's why would I want to hold this when it's depreciating by like 10% a year?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I put it into something that's appreciating 10, 15, 20, or if you're buying something with, you know, potentially lower rents or something where you can put a little sweat equity or whatever into it. I firmly believe in it. And I know the benefits of me being a team leader and me being so close to so many different agents. I know that that's gotten me inside tracks and really helped in the vehicle of finding all of these investment opportunities. So, you know, how much did you learn about investing from just being an agent?
How much I learned about investing in real estate from being a real estate agent? I would say none.
Okay.
My personal experience was already beyond that. I
Understood.
had already seen so many assets. Now,
Right.
what being an agent helped me to do was see a lot of places in a lot of different areas on a massive and very accelerated scale, right? So,
Yeah.
For those of you that were agents on the buy side, especially during the pandemic, for example, you saw a lot of properties.
Yeah, we sure
during that
did.
time frame, right?
Wrote a
Yep.
lot of offers.
Wrote a lot of offers.
that
So you
were
got
wasted
really
paper.
Yes. Wasted digital paper. But, you know, you saw a lot of properties, right? And you saw a lot of markets typically, right? So I don't know about you guys, but our buyers typically will have a budget, and that budget can align to be a lot of locations, right? And so you end up seeing a lot of locations. So that goes back to what I said in the first place. How do I get a job that keeps me close to the thing I want to invest in the first place, right? And that is probably the number one thing that I would say, is that it kept me in a lot of properties. And I got to see firsthand places I would invest in and places I would invest in. But I think that, so most of my clients, I think you need to have, so because you talked about getting deals, okay? So you get deals, I get deals. These are you know, they make sense on the buy side. There's typically a reason that a seller is selling at a discount, right? And we are taking a lot of risk, right? The terms of the deal are such that we are taking more risk. We don't have all of the protections that a regular retail purchaser would get. We don't have the outs that a regular retail purchaser would get. And the seller is getting something other than price that they're looking for, right?
I think that's really important to touch on. So I've had some experiences that I'll be happy to share as well. But when you've bought from people, obviously, if you're getting a discount, it's because there's something that's a bigger priority than just the dollar amount written on the paper. What have you found that people are looking for outside of it? Because I know for sure people are listening to this thinking, well, why would anyone sell me anything at a discount? I don't think that is even possible, blah, blah, blah. So give me an example of somebody that took less because something else was a higher priority.
I can give you multiple examples, right? So in the last year, I think I did 8 acquisitions. The first of which is a 3-unit property in Montreal. It was worth anywhere between 1.1 and 1.2 million. And I bought it for 800,000, right? When this person called me, and I want to be super clear for any real estate people that are listening.
That's unethical.
They did not call me as a real estate broker, okay? They interacted with marketing that I have going out there as an investor.
Yeah.
Now, as a broker, so if ever you're somebody if you're listening to this and you're someone who's in a hard position and you're thinking, which investor do I speak to? Probably speaking to myself or Logan are one of the better opportunities, because we have to kind of tell you your other options, right? We can't just go and not disclose to you what we do for a living.
100%.
And as a result, I'm obligated to say, hey, here's what you could do. Here's what I'm willing to do as an investor. Here's what any investor would say, but at least I'm telling you both options, right? I typically offer 3 or 4 options to my clients, to my sellers. But that story, right? Why would this guy take so much of a haircut on his property?
Yeah. Why lose $250,000?
So he had a private loan on his house.
Ooh, okay.
So he's living in this 3-unit. He has a private loan
Yep.
that he has defaulted on, that he has gone to court over 4 months ago, and the judgment is about to get published. When I say about to get
Yikes.
published, I mean like days away from being published. And that judgment will give every right to the lender to take over the property for the outstanding debt and kick him out and move on.
Oh, wow.
Now, the outstanding debt was $800,000. So I do my calculation, the same calculation you would do. And quite frankly, he owed more money than I should have paid for the property, right? So if I follow all of the typical rules, I should have had to pay something like $750 for this deal. Okay. So already there, I'm telling him, well, listen, buddy, I'll pay you. I'll buy off your debt is basically what I had to do.
Yeah.
And even then, I told him, like, it's too much, right? But now,
He was under a serious time crunch.
Yep.
And this plays into a lot of situations that I found myself in, and the people get frozen in fear so often. So he should have handled this. He could have called you, Mathieu, the realtor,
4 months prior,
2
yeah.
months, 3 months, 4 months prior,
Mhm.
and you probably would have got him $1 million for it.
Exactly. And the reality is that at the time of the meeting, I could not help him in any other way.
Yeah.
There was
Yep.
not a single thing I could do
Yep.
as a broker.
Yeah.
As a private lender, which I also do, maybe I could have done something, bought out the debt, but I'd rather be. I didn't want to do that. You know, at a certain point, you
Well,
have to.
yeah,
I'm
that's
not.
a-
I'm not
Yeah,
charitable, right? I'm not here to.
That's tight too, depending on
Yeah.
the condition of the property.
Yeah.
To lend 800 on something that's worth 1.
Well, I would have just taken over the property. Then if he defaults against me, then I end up the same position, right?
Sure.
Now here's the real key, right? Why? Okay, so he's selling to me for the same price as he owes to the guy. He made zero. He walked away from a sale with $0. Okay?
Yeah.
So why did he do business with me instead of just let the lender
take
take
it.
over, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a bank too; it's a private, so it's not going to affect his
okay.
credit the same way, right? He's not going to go and have a repo on his credit report.
Yeah.
And the reason that he did do the deal is I gave him an option to buy it back. So I said, buddy, I'll buy you for 8. I'm gonna it's worth, let's call it 1.1 at the time. And I don't know exactly what it's worth because I had 2 appraisals at the time. One is at 1.1, one is 1.2. So let's say I'll resell it to you for $960,000 on a rent-to-own deal, meaning I'll buy you out. And my whole plan was I'll buy it, refinance it, be into it for 0. And he takes over operations of the building. So I never want to hear anything about uncollected rents. No, like he's not a tenant. He'd be like a tenant
Superintendent.
buyer. He'd be a master tenant, right?
Yep. A superintendent for sure.
And he gets to still live in the place. I'm just going to collect rent. So you need to pay me this. And the calculated rent was exactly what my overhead would have been. I would have literally made nothing like until the resale. And I would have just been like, you know what? I'm not in it for anything. I make a good spread and I'm happy with it. Right.
Right.
And
How long did you give him to buy it back? Was that a...
I believe it was a 3-year term.
Okay.
And he defaulted. So he chose. So even though he did choose to exercise it, and then he chose, and when I do rent to owns, I do with non-refundable deposits during certain timeframes. He was late on his first one. Obviously, I understood because whatever. And in the end, he chose to just, I'm gonna go. So I said, are you sure? Because the best version for me is that you go. Because I
Yeah.
make the most money if you don't choose to exercise your rent-to-own package. But if you're saying to me you're going to vacate the property, I mean, I'm not going to force you to take
Sure. Yeah.
So I gave him every out. And in fact, my girlfriend's been around a lot of my phone calls with people that I buy from. And I will tell them right in the call, here's my offer. Do not take this offer.
Oh my God. Yeah. I've said that so many times.
Right? So, I can pay in same, like, let's say this was the case and let's say it was 3 months earlier. My cash offer is, and I don't want you to take this offer, it's $800,000, but I'm pretty sure I could net you $200,000 to $300,000 more if you just hired me instead, right? And typically, okay, I'll think about it. They'll call me the next. No, I'll take your cash offer.
Yeah.
So people are looking for something else.
It makes me think of the kids with the cookies.
Oh
Where-
God, that's so funny. Yeah, I know.
Where
what you're
they're
talking about.
like, I'll give you a cookie now or 2 cookies later. And they're like, well, I want the cookie
I want
now.
the cookie now.
Yeah.
Or you see the Oreos versus $10,000.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was just because kids don't know.
Yeah, it's so stupid.
So now, so that's one of the one of the reasons. So typically, there's speed is definitely an element to these things. I don't know what your experience
Well,
has been.
I've seen it on both sides actually. So I've seen it where people are under duress and they need to sell like right friggin' now, similar to that situation that he was in. But I've also seen the exact opposite, where they're scared that they don't want to sell to somebody on the open market and then have to be out in 30 days, in 60 days, or whatever it is. And especially in a softer market like we're in now versus the COVID times or whatever. So when I tell them, hey, you can take as long as you want. Like we picked up a deal in Dollard where we gave the people a year before we went to notary. So they locked up the price for a year.
Yep.
And they were ecstatic about that because they got to take their time to move out. They got to take their time to find another property and whatever. And they just knew that the offer was ironclad, financing in place. We're taking occupancy in a year. But if you want us to do it sooner, you can let us know. And, with like, let's say 4 weeks notice, we can go to notary.
Yep.
The craziest one, though, was this lady that we met on Lake in Dollard. And I told her exactly what you just said. Like, do not take this offer. I think we bought it for like 300 or something like that. It was just, or 250. It was just ridiculously low. And it was because it was like tight, at the time. Like we didn't anticipate the prices to skyrocket. So it was kind of tight. And I told her, I said, this is the best offer I can write, but you should prepare the home for sale and put it up, because I think you're missing out on almost $100,000 if you take this offer. And so don't take it, spend a little time preparing the house for sale and let's get this thing listed and sold. And she goes, absolutely not. I'm like, why? She said, my neighbor, I don't remember the name, Elizabeth down the road, she was prepping her house for sale. She hired the painters to come in and paint it and cleaned it up. She had a heart attack and died. I have no interest in doing that. I was like, what the hell? So basically what happened was this lady equated preparing her house for sale to dying in her head. Mm-hmm. The other thing too is she needed proof that her place was sold to secure her new property that she was buying in Hudson, like a nice new condo that she ended up buying. So she didn't give a rat's ass what this place was sold for. She just needed proof that it was sold so they can reserve her spot there in that condo building. Mm-hmm. So it's just priorities. It's not always about price. Yes, it plays. I'm sure if I were to offer, let's say I offered $250. I'm sure if I were to have offered, $150, she would have told me to fly a kite. Mm-hmm. But, all this to say is there's a lot of other priorities except for just the money.
100%.
Well, losing your home is one thing, but we've actually bumped into situations where people have leaned a lot of different things against their homes, and they're finding them in situations where they owe the wrong people money. Mm-hmm. And that is a time situation that's very, they need a lot of help. But on the flip side to that, I've actually been in conversations with people, and it's the saddest thing to see. Like you were saying, this person, if he would have got to you 2 months, 3 months earlier, we've this poor woman, we met with her one time, and she sat down with us, and the moment she sat down, she just burst into tears because she knew. Yeah, she put her home as leverage for her business, and her business failed. And she would not let go of the home. It was, that was a hard one.
Yeah. Well, I have a better story if you guys want to hear, where I was actually able to mix, everything that I do together in a positive way. And so I had this client. Well, once again, turned into a client. Once again, if there's any people in the real estate authority that are watching this or listening to
Turn it off. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
They approached me as an investor first, okay?
Okay.
And as you know, you and I are not the only ones who do this. Literally, we are two competitors in a certain way doing the same thing, and we don't even come across each other on deals. But myself and everybody else that I know of had come to this house, and we all gave the same, like it was a duplex in Laval. It was in rough shape. Okay. The woman owned probably 98 pets.
Oh God.
Okay. And had no loan against the property, so free and clear, but not in a position to be able to qualify for a loan, right? Retired. What's her plan? I am moving to Ontario. Okay. No problem. Why do you need a cash offer? Well, I need the money to go buy the next thing. I can't buy the next thing until I have the money. Okay. How much money do you need? I think she needed $350, if memory serves. Nobody on the investment side was willing to give her more than $300, so she's short. I said, do you have any other money? She's like, I've got some savings. How much total money, like how much would you need now to be able to finish your purchase and then sell the property? And I think the number was like 200,000.
Okay.
I don't remember the specific, I think it was 200. So what did I do? I put on my everyman hat, okay? And I loaned her $200,000 against the property. So I had a deed of loan. I'm protected.
Yep.
She was able to buy the next thing. So she did a cash offer in Ontario because she had no financing contingency.
Heck yeah.
She got a decent deal from that perspective. She was able to then have close on property 2 before ever selling property 1. She could take her time to move out all the animals.
Were you doing monthly payments with her, or you ballooned it?
I ballooned it.
Nice.
I capitalized so I made it super easy for her. And I'm like, and honestly, what do I care? I'm like 50% loan to value on an asset. Like it's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
So, and of course she signed a brokerage contract too. So I'm making, and I don't sign inexpensive brokerage contracts when I lend you $200,000. You're signing my full package.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, no payments required. Super simple, right? And so she buys it, and then she takes all of her stuff out, and she moves, and we put it for sale, and we sell it within a week.
Fantastic.
Because we still had a very aggressive pricing structure, and I forget the number. I got multiple
Was
offers.
that baked into the deed of loan that you had, that when she listed it had to go for a certain amount, or was that like the brokerage contract was signed with reductions built in or anything like that?
No, it was. I'm very good at demonstrating at what price you should be listing it in order as to create maximum attention from the marketplace.
Cool.
And I have a portfolio of sales that I could pull up for any client of saying, yeah, this is where I got 17 offers, where I got 4 offers, this is where I got 8 offers, this is where I got 10% above ask, 4% above ask. Here I got surprised, I got 50% above ask, you know. So these things. But the point is that, and by the way, when she had cleaned it out, so the price that she got, she would have never gotten when she was living in the property.
No, hell no.
Yeah.
It was still a terrible property. Like, it was still run down, needed a lot of work. There was a horizontal crack in the foundation, you know, all these things,
yikes.
right?
Jeez.
But it was in such bad condition when it was being lived in that even the investor type of client who ended up buying it wouldn't
Couldn't
have
have
walked
seen
through the
through.
property, right?
Yeah.
And so the person who bought it, I believe their plan is a demo and reconstruction.
Oh, wow.
So, but would they have actually walked the property in its state? Would they have been willing to pay the amount they paid if not for the other offers that were there? And the other offers were there because the house was empty, right? And so in the end, this whole process cost the seller a relatively lot of money because you've got a private loan, you've got a commission to pay, what have you. But she still netted way more money than she would have any other way. And I can't think of another organization in Montreal that could have done this deal because, I mean, you could have done it, right? But would you or your agents have thought to do it, right?
Right.
And now that I've told you this, maybe you're like, oh man, there's a lot of deals I could do like that, right? But the point is that, so in my practice, when I go and meet with a seller, no matter what the condition, whether you're a retail, like you're my friend, you're a past client, you're a motivated seller, my entire objective is to go and say, what is the menu of options that I have for you?
Right.
Okay, so here's what I could pay for. Let's say you don't even care about a cash offer, but like maybe you would consider, like, okay, just so you know, a cash offer would look like this. Okay, great. Just so you know, a traditional listing would look like this. Oh, you need money up front? Well, we could do a loan with a sale. We could do all these things. I've got so it's similar to your situation, right? You're talking about deals that you've put together, you know, years ahead of time. I'm currently working on, I've got transactions that are going to be closing in 2025 that I put together in 2023 with an upfront deposit. So I set the price. I give them a deposit that they can use in their lives because typically, once again, what do we talk about before? It's timing or money, right? Is these people that they need help. So by giving an upfront deposit to the amount outstanding, they can typically pay off bad debt.
Yeah.
And then they can stay in the property until a time that made sense, right? So I'm going to be buying a duplex in Lachine where I think we have an 18-month time frame between when I...
that answers our question.
Yeah.
Before we started recording, we were wondering if alarms go off if you have Do Not Disturb on. They do.
They do. So
Proof.
There you go. So I got about 10 more minutes, but the point is, where was I going with this? So 18 months from negotiation to closing.
Yeah.
And I've got a deposit. It's not an insignificant deposit. It's 50 grand, right? But once again, it's the best of both worlds. The guy really wanted to stay in his place. He needed the money.
Yep.
Who else is going to do this deal? Who else is going to go and do $50,000 up front on a deposit, let you stay in the property?
Especially the deposit going to the actual seller and not just sitting in trust.
Yeah, and
That's huge.
So I've become so I'm a specialist. I would consider myself a specialist in creative deals, deal making. So anybody who has this particular case, right? So I have another one. He needed money up front. We have a locked in price. He then needed more money. So we're gonna actually end up. So I gave him more money.
Amended the price.
Well, no, the price stays the same, right? It's just deposit on the amount.
Right. Fair enough.
But then I said, you know what, buddy? Like, we're getting more and more like involved with one another. Like, we're now into $100,000 deposit against the property. I will only do this if we restructure the deal. So the deal was supposed to be I buy it and then I'm going to sell it, right? A flip, right? I'm going to buy and sell. But I'll tell you what we're going to do now is what you know to be a novation agreement. You might have heard novation from our common coaches in our lives, right? Where the price is locked in. We're going to go to market. I have a power of attorney against the property, so I can do this all without his say-so, but we're doing it hand in hand. And whatever I sell it for, above our locked-in price, is my take. And so this way, I never need to close on the property. I don't have a welcome tax to pay.
Yeah.
I don't have holding costs, etc., right? And so all of a sudden, it starts really being, I was able to pay more. So I was not, this deal was presented to a lot of investors. Nobody was willing to pay the $800 that I'm paying. I paid the 800 because I saw multiple exit strategies and was able to go and say, how do I pair my investor hat, my broker hat, my alternative lender hat, and make it a win-win? And so I have a lien against the property, so he can never sell it without my say-so. I have power of attorney that allows me, if let's say we go and we're not on good terms anymore, I can go and execute a sale. And the reality is I also have the promise to purchase that allows me to purchase it. And if ever he defaults on that, I can always go. So we're well protected. It solved and that's the thing, it solved his problem. I think the number one thing in my investment practice is I try to solve problems.
Right.
And I think the difference between myself and my competitors / compatriots in the investment space is if I can figure out a way to give you more money as a seller, I will do it.
Yeah.
And so we do lease purchases. I do lease purchase now, just like I do rent to own on my resales. I love selling to rent to own buyers on the resale. So these are people that probably don't have a full deposit, or their credits are missing a little blip. They went through a divorce or all these things, right?
Sure.
They need a 24-month window to catch up, but they have to live somewhere in the meantime. And as long as they have some deposit and I can see a way out, I will sell to that person. And it's a win-win. I can sell for a bit more than what it's worth today. They lock in a price today. They start building equity as if they're the homeowner, even though they're not yet a homeowner.
Right.
And we have a winning structure. And then for me as a investor landlord, it's a much simpler management because it's like having a net master lease. Like, buddy, the roof caves in, that's your issue.
Yeah.
Like, as long as this is your house on a rent-to-own basis,
You have to take care of it.
Your
Yeah.
maintenance, upkeep, all that is yours, right? And if one day they choose to default on their agreement, well, unfortunately, and I don't want to get there. My goal is always to put people in place that will absolutely close.
Mm-hmm.
But technically, based on the contracts, their deposit is forfeit, and I would have to take over the property, and then I could either sell it on the open market conventionally again, or sell it to a new rent-to-own buyer, or
Right.
do whatever I want, right? I think what am trying to create, and I think what we've been able to create is, like I said, having every tool that exists in Quebec, because once again, when we go and see our friends in the States,
It's a Wild
very
West.
different.
there's a lot more stuff that can be done there that
Yeah.
we cannot do, right? So that's where my practice is currently there. I don't know if we had any specific questions.
Not at all. This is the whole point, is just kind of getting into what it is that you do, and the listeners can kind of figure out if this is a good fit for them to start down that journey. So, man, thank you so much for taking the time and sitting down with us and chopping it up with us. It's been an absolute blast chatting with you.
My pleasure. There is one thing on the investment side of things that I think I tell a lot of my clients, and I didn't get a chance to tell the audience and you guys, right?
Yeah.
I think those of us in the room right now, we have an active income that is real estate, and in my case as well, part of my active income is flipping properties, right?
Yeah.
Same thing for you, Logan, right?
Sure.
Same thing for John. Most people that I speak to, they have an active income, okay? They are employed in some capacity. They are specialists in their field. I argued with a coach of mine for years. I said, we're trying to figure out these ways to buy under market property and take these risky positions. But if you're someone who has a stable gig, you're earning 6 figures, maybe multi-6 figures, right? You're like 5 purchases away from taking your retirement. Like, you should literally figure out a way to buy 5 properties and hold them forever, right?
Yeah.
And just do that, because if you were to buy
You
5,
also have security, because if you have a decent job and you're not relying on flipping to be your 100% income, you can take some risks. You can bet a little bit heavy on what things might happen or whatever. You can be a little bit, you can be a little bit more outcome dependent if you have that stability in your life.
Yeah, I think it gives you options, right?
Yes.
So I think honestly, I have bought turnkey, and I have bought the opposite of turnkey.
Garbage.
I won't. Is this a curse-free podcast?
Yeah, whatever.
Okay. Well, I bought shit boxes, right? And quite frankly, the ROI calculated, like return on investment percentage, when you know how to calculate correctly, which most people don't, is like, it's not worth the headache for most people.
Yeah, I always use the math that I always use is, if I can make half as much money not flipping it and just, sprucing it up a little bit, I'll always just do that. If I can just mow the lawn and put the sign on the lawn and sell it and make half of what I would do if I flipped it, I always just do that.
Which is such a statement on like just preparing a property for the market to be able to sell it.
100%.
Like, people don't realize how much a fresh coat of paint really makes a difference.
100%, dude.
Yeah, that's a whole other
Mowing the
conversation,
lawn.
right? Mowing the lawn. Was it
Yeah.
flooring, paint, and fixtures, right? So,
Yeah.
but so for most people, so once again, I believe, so the audience of your podcast is people that are thinking of getting into business, right? Which I can have an entire monologue on whether or not you should be a business owner. Sounds like we're out of time for that. But if you're someone who has a job and you're
Spoiler alert, don't. No, I'm just
I think, but if you have a job and it pays well and you're not necessarily in like, I want to, most people in my experience are looking for sidelines because they want to make more money or diversify. They're not necessarily looking to exit the grind, right? I really think we don't need to overcomplicate things from a real estate investing perspective. If people were to just buy $500,000 purchases, right, and hold them for a long enough amount of time, real estate appreciates, right? And so $500,000 purchases is $2.5 million in real estate holdings. To simplify the math, let's say it appreciates 10% per year. That's $250,000 of net worth increase to your book. Your personal net worth goes up $250,000 a year, every year, right? Now, it's not actually 10%. It's less than that. But over a long enough time horizon, that example is very simple, and it starts making sense, right? And so I think that what you and I do, we look to buy under market properties, and that's not, we are filling a hole in the marketplace, right? There is a need for that service. We are honestly delivering a service to those motivated sellers, right? Mm-hmm. But for the average person who works for a living and who is looking to diversify their portfolio, they shouldn't be doing these high risk stuff that you and I do. They should be partnering with people like us who know what the heck they're talking about and are bringing them deals, and sometimes not just deals, but just like, hey, buy this house. It fits your budget. You can buy it. It's going to rent, and in 10 years it'll be worth double what you paid for it, right? Yeah. Or they should be doing business with people like us, because on top of that, we'll probably bring them slightly discounted opportunities that we're not taking because it doesn't hit our margins, because we have high cost of borrowing.
Exactly.
You know? Private money is very expensive. And so like that's like the example, right? You talked about if I make half on a redoing the grass and what have you. Yep. I might have, if I were in your shoes, if I have an audience of people that are looking to invest in real estate, I would probably just sell it direct to them and say, hey, I don't even want to close on it. I can make a buffer in between and then go and say, hey, listen, I got it at 20% off. I'll sell it to you at 10% off. You make a spread. They're still saving 10%, which at a $500,000 purchase price is $50K. Yeah. Right. And so there's so much to be done. But I think that if you're looking from an investing in real estate conversation, if you have active income that you don't want to get rid of, don't take the risky positions. Just buy stabilized assets and wait long enough.
There you go.
Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait.
That's right.
That's
it. Let's end on that. That was awesome. That was awesome. Mathieu, thanks so much for coming in and chopping it up with us. It was a blast. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of Montreal's Elite Unleashed, podcast for hustlers looking to level up their lives.